Good evening. Dissident Republicans telephoned warning they'd left a car bomb at Newry Courthouse last night, but it was just 17 minutes later that the bomb went off, causing substantial damage to court property and to a nearby church. People had been playing badminton in the church hall just 7 minutes before the explosion. The police say it's a miracle no one was killed or injured. Our reporter Gordon Adair has spent the day in the city and joins me now live. Gordon.
Well, Noel, it's a familiar busy scene behind me now, but it's only in the past hour or so that parts of Newry city centre have been reopened. For most of the day, the whole area has been cordoned off, traffic has been turned away, and customers for the businesses here have been few and far between. But it could all have been so much worse. When you hear the detail of what happened here last night, you realise that it really is quite amazing that this evening we're not reporting on multiple injuries or even death.
Searching for clues in the hunt for those behind a bombing which could so easily have been a mass murder. At least 200 pounds of explosives were packed into this car, which was then backed up against the gates of the courthouse. At 10:20, the police were told of a telephoned warning. 17 minutes later, the device exploded. Officers were still trying to clear the area, and for some residents, the first they knew of it was when the blast went off.
We didn't hear anything at all night. We got a text earlier on from a neighbour who said that there was an abandoned car at the courthouse, and that was the last we heard.
It seems to be something of a miracle that nobody has been killed here.
Absolutely. We went down the bottom of the road and there was traffic still passing by the site, and I couldn't believe that the traffic was still passing by, and how people managed to escape their lives, I do not know.
I was just getting into bed when the whole house shook. I actually thought of an earthquake, but I couldn't believe it. And then the phone kept ringing, and are you all right? And they just heard it on the news. Over in England, they'd heard it on Sky News, and my son was ringing to make sure we were okay. But it was terrible. The whole house just shook, and we were shaking. You know, it was terrible.
This Presbyterian church just across the road from the courthouse was badly damaged, and members of its badminton club had a very lucky escape, leaving just minutes before the bomb went off. The symbolism of an attack on the courthouse is very clear, at a time when policing and justice is the focus of attention, but the area's MP says those behind this attack will not be allowed to derail the political process.
I think what we need to do is, in terms of political leadership, is offer people hope of progress, of a better future, of an ability to reach agreement and accommodations with each other, and to make steady political progress. And I think that way we will ensure that the community doesn't fall into a sense of despair, and I think that's exactly the objective that the people who planted the bomb were trying to achieve.
On the streets of Newry, there is a sense of outrage.
Everybody that we speak to, and everybody I've been speaking to this morning, I've been in and out walking around the streets, are all disgusted. No other word, not upset, not hurt, disgusted with this trying to drag us back to the dark days.
In a moment I'm going to be speaking to Conor Pattterson from Newry Chamber of Commerce, but first joining me now is the Reverend Brian Colvin, whose church you saw on that report. Reverend Colvin, it seems like the people attending your church last night had a very lucky escape.
They certainly did. We had a number of functions in our church last night. The last group to leave were the badminton club, and they left about 10:30, and a number of the members of the badminton club have clear recollections of driving past the car that was parked outside the courthouse.
And what about damage to the church? It's fairly extensive.
Well, this is the closest I've been able to get to the church all day. I did get an aerial view in daylight from another part of the town, but until the police have finished their investigation, we'll not be allowed into the premises to get a full picture of the damage. I think we can see that stained glass windows have been damaged, but beyond that, we do not know at this point.
The church was being used last night for the badminton club, this evening for a talk. This is really an attack on the whole community.
Very much so. I mean, the whole community has suffered today, as you can see, economically and socially, educationally, functions in our church as well. The whole community has suffered.
Okay, Reverend Colvin, thank you very much. Conor Pattterson, this is the last sort of thing that Newry needs in these difficult economic times.
Times are hard, not just in Newry, but across Northern Ireland. Couldn't have happened on the worst day. This was an attack on the people of Newry. These people took time to set this up, and they showed disdain for the risk. They discounted the risk to civilians.
This is, of course, a town that's been booming recently, and one of your fellow businessmen I spoke to earlier said that people here are very resilient and seem determined to bounce back.
Resilient, hard-working, proud. We've been here before. We've worked hard to regenerate this city, and we're not going to give that up.
Well, as you say, we've been here before. I suppose the hope now is that this really isn't a step into the past.
Well, we need to trust in our politicians. The last thing we should do is lose our nerve, either here in Newry or in Northern Ireland. That's what these people want.
Okay, Mr. Patterson, thank you very much for joining us. So here in Newry this evening, I suppose the overriding feeling is one of relief that we're not talking about injuries or deaths. Back to you.
Gordon Adair reporting, and our Home Affairs correspondent Vincent KEARNEY is with me now. Vincent, the Chief Constable concerned at the explosion but also at the short warning that was given.
Indeed, as we've heard, just 17 minutes. That was the gap between the first warning call and the explosion itself, and the bomb exploded as officers were still evacuating the area. Now that was probably a very deliberate tactic. By giving such a short warning, it just ensured that army bomb disposal officers couldn't get to the device and certainly didn't have time to look at it and defuse it. But they may also have been deliberately targeting the police officers evacuating the area, perhaps hoping that some of them would be caught up in the explosion. But the police say that could have resulted in significant damage and casualties, and not just to police officers but also to civilians. As we heard from Gordon Adair's report there, we had members of the local badminton club in the nearby church hall until just minutes before the explosion. Speaking at a press conference today, the Chief Constable, Matt Baggett, was asked about the warning given, and he described it as totally inadequate.
It is clearly reckless at the best and clearly callous at the worst. You know, there is absolutely no excuse for bringing bombs onto our streets in any shape or form, but added to that, the time in which people were given was severely limited.
The police have come in for some criticism themselves today in the Assembly.
Indeed they have. As we know, Matt Baggett has been asked about his views on the dissident threat many times during his 7 months in office. Now on each occasion he's described the threat as high, in fact as severe. That means an attack from distance is regarded as highly likely. Now in recent months there have been a number of attacks and attempted attacks. Constable Patrick Heffron was seriously injured when a bomb exploded under his car. We've had shots fired at a number of police stations. Then in Katie on Friday night we had 2 murderers abandoned outside the police station, and then last night comes this bomb explosion in Newry. Now the police have been saying for some time that they've been expecting some kind of dissident response to the Hillsborough Agreement just 2.5 weeks ago. But speaking in the Assembly today, the Ulster Unionist Deputy Leader Danny Kennedy accused Matt Baggett and others of underestimating the threat.
I and my party have been concerned for some time that the threats posed by Republican dissidents have been viewed with a certain amount of complacency by the Chief Constable and his senior command, and by senior political figures, including the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, in the mistaken belief that these individuals were unrepresentative and lacked the manpower to cause serious problems.
Now, Noel, I put that criticism to the Chief Constable at the press conference today, and he firmly rejected the suggestion.
Often taking the dissident threat complacently, we have put many more police officers back on the streets. We are continuing to invest in the right capabilities and technology to tackle the dissident threat.
Now, no, the Chief Constable went on to say that the fact that 130 people have been arrested for alleged dissident Republican activity over the past 15 months clearly demonstrates the threat is being taken seriously, and he says the police will continue to take it seriously.
Okay, Vincent, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's go now to Stormont and our political editor, Mark Devonport. Mark, we've heard Danny Kennedy. What other condemnation or other comments were there at Stormont today?
Well, Mr Kennedy was speaking at the start of proceedings at Stormont today, in which all the parties roundly condemned the attack in Newry. We didn't have a joint appearance from the First and Deputy First Ministers, but they did issue a joint written statement in which Peter Robinson said that the sole purpose of those behind the Newry attack was to bring Northern Ireland back to the darkest days of the past, and they would not succeed. Martin McGuinness described the attack as futile and said it would only serve to strengthen the resolve of the Stormont parties to go forwards.
Turning to wider politics, Mark, we've heard now that Lady Herman will not stand